It's great that we can actually have a US or rather even a global user group meeting in a virtual way, given the present situation. So I'm certainly very grateful that we can organize this and run with this, and that so many of you managed to join today. So welcome. So let's try and make the absolute most of it of the day. I know we have very good sessions on keynotes, and I welcome all the external speakers. I'm very grateful for their presentations. So I think we'll have some very good sessions, and we'll try and showcase and use our virtual methods to gather your feedback and suggestions and comments and questions. So bear with us as we work this new model of virtual working. I think this may just be the future for a while, given the overall pandemic. So let's make the most of it and have a good, 6-7 hours here with all the sessions that are coming. And I'll give you my first sort of few perspectives on the new frontiers and horizons for structural chemistry, and where the CCDC presently is at, but also more importantly, where we're heading over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. As I think, well, you know, I'm Juergen Harter, my name. I've been at the CCDC for 2 years now. It's my second year as CEO. My background, just a little bit on that. I've worked for various biotechs and software companies like Cambridge Soft, PerkinElmer Informatics, Horizon Discovery for gene editing. And I was often on the IT side or chemistry side. By training, I've got a PhD in organic chemistry. So over all of my career, the last 20 years, I've more or less either worked on chemistry, life sciences, biotech, or big data, including clinical trials. So kind of coming to the CCDC in summer 2018 has been quite a privilege, because it's a great institution. It's got fantastic data and fantastic people and fantastic science. And in many ways, I could combine a lot of things with my own previous career. And it's a pleasure to be running the CCDC with all my other management and people who are there. It's just fantastic. So and we're grateful that I guess in this present moment, I should say we're quite grateful that our business model or operational model is sort of holding up, in the sense that we can remote control the entire institute and run it all from our homes. That's just it's been rather stressful the last 4-6 weeks to switch over to this sort of mode, but we have managed to do that, and that is just something to be very grateful for. So hopefully we can carry on like this over 2020, or I mean, hopefully we'll come out of lockdown eventually in the next few weeks, but we'll see. It could go for a while. But even if it goes for a while, the CCDC in its operations, we are operational, we are working or liaising with all our customers, and we will obviously continue. And I actually personally think that structural chemistry has a lot to say now to the world. And you know, given things like COVID-19 research and drug discovery, or even vaccine development, I think structural chemistry and structural biology are absolutely key here. So I'll be saying a bit more on all of this. But obviously, we are also participating in a bunch of research initiatives, in a big moonshot initiative to do coronavirus research with our discovery team. And again, it's something that I'm very happy about, that we can do this with our software and with our data, and using that to, you know, hopefully it's going to make a difference and has a positive influence on some of these projects that are currently going on. And I should say, if any one of you hears of any other initiatives or things that you feel the CCDC ought to be part of in the coming weeks and months, do certainly let us know, because we would want to assess that and see if we can make a difference and help. All right, so let me go first to this slide, which I believe most of you might have seen before, but I'll just say that briefly again. That's the CSD. It's a fantastic resource of more than 1 million structures by now, mainly half organic, half metalloorganic compounds, and more or less data extracted from all literature, or from, well, coming from the X-ray machines over several decades, 60 years really, and coming out of hundreds, if not thousands, of journals worldwide. So more or less, we extract and store and have all the structural chemistry data from around the world. And that, long may that continue. I guess the plan there for the next 3 to 5 years would be to move towards the 2nd million. Last year, 2019, we celebrated quite extensively at various conferences and with various keynotes at various key events that we reached the 1 million milestone. And I think it's a testimony to how great the entire community is, and all the scientists who have contributed these structures. So huge thanks to all of them. And it's from the community and for the community. I think that's a great achievement, and we feel like we're the guardians of the structural chemistry molecules of the world. That's us, and we like to have complete coverage in that space. And that's something that should continue. Now, I'd like to think of the CCDC or the CSD as an ocean of knowledge. Somebody else might have coined that term before me, but I'm going to use it here. There's just such a wealth of information in the database. And I'm not going to go through the table here because you can sort of see that and read it for yourselves, but you can see the diversity of what's really in it. Let me just, as I talk here, let me show a few trends and some slides that I can hopefully play. If I press play, here you can, for example, see the number of structures containing particular elements in the CSD, and you can see how this over the last 5 decades has changed. You can see phosphorus is making quite an appearance and going much higher. Of course, chlorine and sulfur is very high up there anyway. This is everything outside carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, or oxygen. So we've removed those. Going forward, I believe we will produce quite a few more infographics of this type and figure out what's in the database, and we will hopefully be able to share this sort of thing in the coming months and years via a new website once we've built that, so we can share more infographics. Here's another one which I'd like to show with all of you to kind of see what sort of knowledge or insights can be gained from the totality of the data. I mean, here you see, for example, that ferrocene is making a bit of an appearance in the 80s and 90s. That's gray at the bottom, 3rd or 4th from the bottom, going up to 5th or 6th place. And then watch the orange one, the MOFs, the metalloorganic frameworks. They are actually acting like a Formula 1 racing car. I mean, they've gone in 10, 20 years, they've gone to now over 100,000 entries for the CSD. So they're in 2nd, 3rd place now. That's 10% of the CSD for metalloorganic framework. So you can clearly see that that was a massive advance with this type of chemistry. And obviously we're hoping to do more such infographics to understand how data changes over the years. Suffice it to say that we also have most of the world's drugs in the CSD. Everything in green here, this is the top 100 drugs based on sales worldwide. The green ones are entries that are existent in the CSD. The gray ones are entries, these are the bigger molecules and more the proteins, so those are the entries in the PDB, and I'll tell you a bit more later how I see CSD and PDB coming a bit closer together, and biology and chemistry coming slightly closer together over time. But anyway, the green ones are PDB, and then the white ones would be things not yet determined, so no single crystal available yet, or not published yet, or just, you know, maybe behind patents, etc., which eventually we might get these things. We're obviously looking for these things, but that's not yet in the database. Now, I want to briefly tell you about the sort of organizational changes and evolution that the CCDC as an organization faces. Basically, the bottom line is that in the last 2-3 years and the coming years, we're trying to really go for growth as a center. And we want to obviously enact and follow our vision, which is to advance structural science worldwide. And we want to do that by pushing excellent science, growing our data, and pushing great quality for all that data. So data integrity, data precision, all these things are very important. And also on top of that, obviously we're about 75 people at the moment. We might be growing to, let's say, 100 over the next few years. In different places, including CCDC Inc. US, to serve the customers better. We're also always evolving or developing more operational excellence to run the center in a more efficient way. And I put digital first here down as well on this overall vision map here. I think this is quite important nowadays, if you think about it, to be doing things digitally first. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's basically the concept of us running digital drug design center or digital drug manufacturing centers. And it's like, you know, other companies, they build jumbo jets first digitally in the computer, and then later they get actually engineered and built. Here it's the same concept for drug discovery or drug development. And in this day and age, when everything goes virtual, or seemingly now even more so after COVID, having a model or a business model that can do a lot of things virtually and digitally is potentially quite advantageous. And it's long time coming for the pharmaceutical industry anyway, and I believe Joe Donoghue later will tell us a lot about the kind of digital developments, how, you know, technology, science, and data are coming together for the wet labs, and what changes are in store over the next few years for, you know, all of the pharmaceuticals and the biotechs really when it comes to digital. So again, we're hoping as a CCDC we're ideally placed here and we can lead the way with this digital first concept. This bit is the objectives 2020 overview and focus areas. I actually don't expect you to be able to read this. Sorry, you need really good glasses for this. It's too small, but I'm not going to talk through all the details on that. Just to say that obviously we care about sustainability, running the CCDC in a very sustainable fashion. It's very important for us because we want to be here in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, even 100 years. Charitable aims, very important for us as a charity to fulfill those and make sure people can, educate on chemistry, and that we do proper outreach around the globe and also into Africa via our FAIR program, so that we have, good global coverage and everybody can basically utilize the data we have and the software we have. And we need to clearly fulfill our charitable aims here. We want to push our brand, and I'll be saying a few more things about the concept of data trust later. And generally advancing our reputation and our global reach, going more into China and India, etc. Obviously, we've got good coverage into US, Japan, Europe, and UK already, but the Far East would be very good to add a bit stronger. And then we want to live by a very good culture as a center, and we do that. We have several good values that people live by and work by. That's very good. And hopefully from all of that, that also flows to how we treat and interact with all our customers. We like customer centricity. We like to make sure our customers are satisfied. And that's why it's so important that we have UGMs like today's. And we do like all the interactions and the feedback from you. So I can only encourage you once again today to totally interact with us and also challenge us and tell us what you like or what you don't like. We're really dependent on that kind of feedback and criticism from all of you. The excellence I already mentioned. I do care passionately about operational excellence. So on the operations side, we will make further improvements to the whole organization to be even more efficient and more, I guess, better processes, better workflows, more automation, better business systems. We've invested quite a lot in different business systems, which is helping us at the moment. We've got our CRM in the cloud, and we've got HubSpot for marketing and all sorts of systems in the cloud now, which is really helping us, as you can imagine, in the present situation. But excellence includes other things like top governance for the Institute as well. I'm certainly grateful that we now have more directors in CCDC Inc. So again, welcome to Joe Donoghue and Rajarshi Gupta, who recently joined CCDC Inc. I'm very grateful for them as new directors. And then, of course, I'm very grateful for all the trustees at the mothership over in the UK. And the growth story I mentioned, we want to go for more growth. We've had good years, 2018 and 2019, about 15% growth each. 2020 might look a bit different. We'll have to see how that plays out. But at the moment, it's looking relatively okay despite the situation. So again, our overall growth plans might not be too hindered, but obviously the world is constantly changing at the moment. So we'll have to see and adapt and go through all that. Now, I'd like to briefly highlight how we got to this ocean of knowledge of more than 1 million molecules. And this has been something that's been going on, I guess, for 60 years here in terms of how we started capturing the data that came from experiments around the world and from hundreds of thousands. I believe 350,000 scientists would have worked on, determining X-ray crystallography crystal structures and then sending them to the CSD via the SIFT 1.0 file. So, from experiment to data via particular data formats or data standards, SIFT 1.0, that in future might move to SIFT 2.0, and it's probably something the CCDC can lead with. And then obviously into the database, and that's the database of the last 10 years with the technology we've had so far. That database itself will have to evolve quite a lot and be modernized in the coming year or 2 years. So we're building a whole new architecture there, a new enterprise architecture for all our software suites, but also for our actual database technology will change and improve. And we're doing all of that in order to scale the CCDC further and be able to interact or basically cross-connect with other databases and share data better, search it better, all these good things. Now I'll talk about some of these themes in a minute, what we'll be able to do in the coming years. Bottom left, you just see some of the suites that we have, and I believe we have talks to pretty much most of these suites. Yinka, Vera, and Jeff will all be telling us some of the advances of what's coming with the next release. And again, the fact that we're managing to actually do a release for end of April is testimony to the fact that we're quite operational as an organization. And because we had planned in January to do a release end of April, and even despite coronavirus and COVID-19 and all the disruption that's caused, we're still holding to that target and able to actually ship out the first release here from the CCDC. So that is actually quite amazing. And well done to the whole software development team and everybody else who helped there. But yeah, so I won't say much more on the different suites because you'll be hearing way more from others, and Pete will be talking about the roadmap, of course, today as well. So he can tell you what's coming in the future months as well for the year, and he can tell you a bit more about the present release. One thing I've noticed, and others over the recent years since I've been going to various conferences and traveling externally to go to the key events, when you see or engage with various scientists and other keynotes and presenters, and you go to exhibition stands, and you know, at the European Crystallography meeting or ASCA in Singapore or over in the US, we've been at a few places last year, then it's pretty clear that the way the instrumentation and the techniques has moved on over recent years is absolutely phenomenal. It's a bit like Moore's law in computing. You know, every year the sort of quality and the precision doubles and the speed doubles, that sort of thing. And if you translate this to crystallography, it just means these synchrotrons get better and better. New techniques show up like micro ED or X-ray free electron lasers and all sorts of good things, and more robotics, more AI, more or better sample characterization, sample preparation, sample management. All these sort of developments lead to the fact that more and more data is coming our way. And we obviously as the CCDC would like to capture all of that. So we have to continuously evolve how we store data, what formats do we store it in, how can we take it in from these new methods, you know, and also how can we deal with the increased volume. And this is partly why looking at these methods and how those have been moving on and the performance of these methods, I'm kind of convinced that we might be getting to the second million much faster than we got to the first million. And then it's debatable whether we go to 5 or 10 million, how fast that would happen, and whether, you know, that many structures even sort of exist. I mean, they do exist, I think, but whether they are determined. Anyway, so that's kind of the Moore's law for fast crystal structure prediction. Moving on from here, just a few comments on overarching product themes. This is something some of you may have already heard as we were visiting some of you and research partners and other customers and prospects when we tour and go around. If you haven't heard it yet, here's the slide. So these are some of the 7 themes that we care about as a center at the moment for the next 2-3 years, shall we say. Top left, and this is probably top anyway, we want to create a much better, more seamless user experience for everyone and produce a coherent suite of all of our products and services such that you can interact with all of this in a much easier and seamless way as an end user. So much better user experience. So we're hiring, you know, UX UI consultants to help us with this kind of endeavor, and I think this will be very good. This will also be partly community shaped and shaped by all your feedback. So do tell us what you like or don't like about the user interfaces and what requirements you have. Then on the data management side, I mentioned the fact that we're evolving our whole database technology. That's basically future proofing and making it scalable for the next 10 years. But also this will help us to link not just to other data centers or databases, but also behind firewalls to clients, and we can link to your internal databases and then cross search the CSD as well as your databases in novel ways, obviously protected with IP protection and behind firewalls, etc. But again, this will be very, very powerful in the future. The visualization, I mean, chemistry was never 2D, it's always been 3D, let's face it. So visualization, I believe the CCDC has the cutting edge there and a unique advantage in visualizing structural data, because we've got such high quality structural data and good software and top people. So we need to be continuing to think about how can we drive better visualizations and lead the way here. It's something we care about a lot. This may go into augmented reality, into virtual reality. It may be used better for teaching and education. You know, people can put their goggles on and then look at the molecules in much more detail and from all angles. So more visualization is something we care about. And then on the right, I won't read through all of this. Maybe just the top one, I'll mention that. We care a lot about advancing our search capabilities and making that more powerful and much more intuitive. That never really stops. I mean, we want to be the best in searching chemical information and help you do that yourselves as well with our tools. So we want to really power that forward. and we'll do that over this year. Maybe at the bottom right, I haven't put the word AI down there, artificial intelligence, but the fact that we're kind of storing, or will be storing, way more physical chemical properties, that will allow us to run more algorithms over all of the data that we have, and then ultimately we can likely predict more things or generate more insights based on machine learning, deep learning, or any other AI methods that we can work with or collaborate with other companies or people with to try them out on the CSD. So AI is a very important topic. It's obviously in everyone's mouth, and I believe the CSD has a good role to play here to provide top data for good AI work. Speaking of data, so I just want to move on to data and say that as a center, we do clearly care about top quality data, but we also need to make sure our data follows the fair data principles. And I'm not sure whether everybody would have heard of fair data principles. It just means basically data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, not only by humans, but also by all the machines in the future. And to that end, we've been reflecting and thinking hard, how could we make the CSD much fairer? We already follow a number of those principles, but we quite like to introduce more things that will allow us to make it even fairer. So that would include things like more interlinking, using standard identifiers, maybe creating better knowledge graphs or ontologies and things like that. We'd like to produce higher levels of machine accessibility, although through the Python API, you can already do all of or some of that already, but we'd quite like to do machine accessibility through the web in future. We don't have that yet. And then generally, we want to have much richer representations of all our data entries and exploiting more semantic technologies to achieve greater interoperability. And just going beyond the sort of normal diffraction data, but go to other experimental and computational results. So basically just going beyond storing the normal molecules, but also storing computational calculations or theoretical calculations. And that's where, you know, our efforts around the crystal structure prediction work come in. You know, there's a big work group going on, and we want to store those landscapes eventually with several people in a consortia or in a working group to set new standards for storing all these theoretical landscapes, and obviously linking them to the structures as well. So you can see that that all comes under FAIR as well, and how we expand our data and what we store. I'm not going to go through this slide, just showing a few of the identifiers that we have in use. Hopefully we can add more the INCHI identifier from UPAC, which is all very good work happening there. Might be excellent if we had full INCHI coverage to the CSD eventually. And then on the bottom right, you can see various other data sources like the PDB, ChemSpider, PubChem, etc. So we want to link far deeper and better with all of them. Generally, I think in the coming years, we would want to link chemical data and biological data a bit stronger. It's not an easy mission to have. It's quite tricky to achieve a better interoperability between these two fields of chemical crystallography and protein crystallography. That is hard. There's a lot of papers out there and explaining as to why that's hard. But we still feel and think that we need to make some progress here. We've actually won a grant recently with jointly with the PDB in Europe to do a ChemBioGraph, which is more or less a sophisticated knowledge graph of protein annotations, and then in our case it'll be the ligand annotations, and then you can link the two for any given protein entry that has ligands in there, and then any annotations can then be shown in novel ways of graphs and stuff. So that'll be good work for the next 2-3 years to do this, and it'll bring the PDB and the CSD closer together, which I think will be advantageous to the wider scientific community. Generally, we care about precision, of course. I mentioned the ligands in the PDB. With our cross-miner and other tools in the protein forum we're planning, or modified protein storage we're planning, we can hopefully bring better quality and precision to the ligands in the PMB. But this is an expertise we have here, and we'd like to participate there better. But yeah, so I mean, we can discuss that later and get your take on what you think about linking biology and chemistry a bit stronger. But I happen to think that this is extremely important that we find a way forward here. The CSD itself will of course evolve as well, and this is again us adding way more data, more metadata to all the sets we have at the moment. We have obviously a high number of quality metrics that we presently use, and we're going to run more workflows over the database to improve the data integrity even further. And then we're working towards becoming, I guess, what I would call a data trust center, or a CCDC as a data trust, so that you can totally trust that data. And I'll tell you in a minute a bit more on this topic. Here is just the additional sort of fields and things that we might like to link to a CSD structure, and some of these fields could be coming from other databases that we would want to link a bit deeper with. And as you move on from this slide to the next, you can see a potential future sample entry of a CSD structure or molecule with all the various added fields being populated. This is all possible, hopefully, in a flexible sort of way, an expandable way, once we have our new database architecture that's coming. So CCDC as data trust, I mentioned we want to be the trusted data repository where our data can be fully trusted, has top quality, is very precise, has a huge wealth of information and knowledge. And within that, we have maybe gold sets and gold standards of subsets that could be used in future for machine learning and training various algorithms. So we'll have to find a way of how we can supply those new high quality subsets as well. Now at the CCDC, we don't just care about excellent data and data coverage, but we care a lot about top science. And last year we've established a scientific advisory board where we have members, esteemed members from various areas like non-pharma, catalysis, MOFs, materials and product development, early stage discovery and optimization, pharma and agro, top left. So it's 9-10 people on that board. It's brand new. They're thinking through various scientific target areas. I'm not going to read the graph or chart on the left, bottom left, but these are some of the areas that we're currently working on. We need to do more analysis as to which of these areas are we going to push stronger. It depends on what the market requires or what the end users require and where the demand is strongest. So that's something we have to work out in the coming months and years. But suffice it to say that as a center, we want to push science and push excellence there as well and lead with that. And create new science too, and create new insights from the data using the kind of hypotheses that we might be pursuing. And we do have an international scientific network beyond the SAB, because many scientists often contact us. So, and we fund various scientists as well through PhD programs or postdoc programs, mainly UK, but we might extend that into US and other places too. Suffice it to say, it's a global operation here, CCDC, so we don't just want to operate in the UK and Europe or US. We might want to add a bit more in the Far East and work with all scientists around the world to push science. But we're very passionate about science, and I hope you feel that and you all know that about us, and you like working with us on scientific topics. So the future of science in the CSD, just a slide on this to say that once we go beyond just storing structures, and once we add additional experimental information in batch, and we're talking in the millions of extra entries for things like melting points or solubility or other things that we could store, experimentally, and we have to figure out a way of how we can extract all this from the literature and kind of pump it into the database. But once we have that, we can also run all our compute power and cloud compute power against the database ourselves, and this is something that our customers would do as well. And we can calculate more information too. That's the block on the left, the red one, the blob there, calculated information. And then once you have all of that, you can picture that in future we can derive better models and maybe work out novel trends from all the chemistry and the things that are going on in the database and things we can know from these new calculated info points. And then we can derive knowledge and generate insights, which is something, again, we care about. And this brings me to the kind of concept of, again, going first digitally. And again, we'll hear a bit more from Joe later here, no doubt. I believe quite passionately that CCDC can lead the way here in creating digital drug design and manufacturing centers. So this is sort of very much on the commercial end for big pharma clients. I mean, it's a new concept. We've trialed it with a few clients yet, but hopefully we can extend this to new partners we have and new clients altogether. It means, what does it mean? What is a digital drug design center? It means you can kind of have an interactive knowledge-based precision drug design and manufacturing and have the whole thing done data-driven with the best software from the CCDC and the best data underneath from the CSD, and then using the software tools, automation, hopefully more AI, more machine learning and more workflows to do things like risk analysis, health checks, safety checks, all sorts of interesting things to do with solid form design and later manufacture. You can do all sorts of extra analyses and you can run them with the workflows. And I believe, you know, if I had a slide that could build here, I would merge the blue silos at the moment. You know, you've got material science, discovery science, chemistry, biology, medicinal chemists, computational chemists. They're all a bit separate, but I think in recent years this is all merging and coming closer together, and people are interacting and synergizing stronger. So I should really put a build to this slide to bring all these silos together. And for me, the concept of building these digital design center is to bring these different scientists and different fields together in a better way, and then enabling it with the software suites we have and with the data we have here, and basically, you know, doing new things, detecting new things, designing new things in a faster, better way with more quality and more precision. And that, I would call that going digitally first. And obviously, if you then go beyond that, you suddenly are well in the AI land. And I haven't got a slide on how much AI is mentioned in various journals recently, cheminformatics, bioinformatics, or JAX, or all else, JSIM. But if you counted it, it's had an exponential explosion where AI, machine learning, deep learning is mentioned in chemistry in various journals. It's gone since, you know, 10 years ago, it was just a few hundred. Now it's in the tens of thousands of contributions there. So clearly AI is here to stay, and it will make a massive difference in how we do chemistry. But AI needs top data quality underneath, and that's what the CSD is. So if you're running your algorithms, make sure you utilize the best data. Of course, you can then do even more here with structure-based drug discovery. And again, that's also why I think linking biology and chemistry stronger together will help structure-based drug discovery as well. And it will help the algorithms and the machines to interpret and understand the data in better ways. That's why I think it's so important to crack this more complicated nut to link biology and chemistry in sophisticated ways in the future. So we want to play a role here. And lastly, I just want to sort of bring this all together again organizationally, and what we do in terms of data and science. So I mentioned we care a lot about data and we want to grow the data much more as a CCDC, but we care about science, we care about our people, we care about our customers and all our end users, and we want to bring all this together in a kind of what I would call a virtuous flywheel here, where everything improves at the same time and we help one another here. And all these circles, our processes, our projects, our systems, we're investing in all of that to advance with it, and then thereby producing better crystallography science in the future, producing or continuing to produce excellent software products and services, and also being able to deliver top professional services like the digital design center concept, which is essentially, it's a service based on all our software and our data. But yeah, that's something we want to do here. And that means we go from big data to smart knowledge. We'll make the data smarter because we're exploiting the data. We're basically exploiting the ocean of knowledge that I mentioned earlier in my talk. And from here, we can then see what new discoveries and insights we will all collectively learn around the world. And I think, if anything, that is much needed now. That's needed for drug discovery, but it's also needed for advanced materials design or functional materials design, and all sorts of other interesting areas where I think our data and our software can play a role. So this brings me to a conclusion. I want to open maybe for a few minutes. I probably have a few minutes for questions. Maybe I've used up my time, Carmen, I don't know. I think I've got 5 minutes, and I'm very happy to take some questions, but I'd like to thank, thank various people who've helped me here with some of the slides, and then various colleagues, of course. And I'm very grateful we can have this meeting today, and I'm grateful for all the next speakers. I'm very much looking forward to what they all have to say. And yeah, I'll probably stop here now and just give you the opportunity to ask a few questions or make some comments. And I guess you can either do that over the microphone, or I can read it out as you chat it into the chat box. But let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The one thing that gets missing is the applause, so consider yourself applauded. So if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself. I think we can handle the an actual that you can talk to this. So is there anyone who would like to ask Juergen a question at this point?
Hey, I have one. This is Stephen Kelly here.
Hey, Stephen, go ahead.
So you mentioned about in the future coupling CCDC data with other experimental data. And one thing they think that works to the advantage of the CSD is single crystal structure determination isn't really a garbage in, garbage out method. You have to have at least a certain degree of quality in the sample, or the solution is basically uninterpretable. Whereas melting point and a lot of these other methods, the literature is all over the place with respect to reproducibility. So is there any consideration as to how you would deal with that problem? That has nothing to do with data curation. It just has to do with the scientific literature in general, and something I think single crystal structures get around.
Yes, no, this is a very good point. Thank you for making that. I think melting points can maybe be a bit of a mess in terms of the methods of how they were determined in the literature and all that. But we are in a new consortium with a bunch of top consumer companies and also pharma companies, where we're looking at assessing sets of melting points and how they were stored and measured and with different methods. So I guess we first have to go through that for a few months to see what the actual true situation is for melting points, rather than just pumping any odd melting point into the database, because I wouldn't want to do that. I think we need to have top quality there, and we need to understand the methods, which is why we need metadata on all methods for determining melting points. And then if we have, I guess, gated quality criteria, we would only take in physicochemical properties where we truly understand how they were determined and how trustworthy they are, because otherwise we would be damaging that sort of thing that I explained in terms of CCDC acting as a data trust center.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions?
Hi, Juergen. This is Satish from Vertex. I had a quick question on probably like integrating or potential integration with the computational methods, which have a lot of like several databases out there. And because like there is Materials Project, there is Nomad, bunch of other databases, primarily from the QM, quantum mechanical world, from crystal structures, which are organic or metal organic frameworks. So are there any thoughts on how the integration might happen and what are the challenges there?
No, I think, again, you raised an interesting point. It's not trivial to integrate into other databases. So if you haven't got the right identifiers or the right ways to link to the right entries, it's very difficult. And that's why we need to push our work on establishing the best identifiers and the best ways of linking. And I guess I can only say interlinking has been a topic for a few years at the CCDC, but we're going to enforce that a bit stronger in the coming years. And we're going to think through which of the extra data sources should we be linking and how can we best achieve it. But suffice it to say, we need to first evolve and modernize our database architecture, which is much the work for 2020 for quite a lot of, well, we have 3 enterprise architects, for example, working on it, and a whole database team are working just on that. And it takes several phases, 2 phases to do that work to conclude by end of 2020. So before we've done that, we can't actually link in big ways, in batch, in an easy enough way with good workflows. So I think we need to do that work first and assess then what can we link in. But I was kind of talking for 3 to 5 years out, and clearly I think linking to other databases and other data sets is something we should continue to consider and realize and work through how that's to be done.
Thank you very much, Satish. And I should point out that in our feedback session this afternoon, one of the areas that we're asking is, what resources, what organizations do you see we should be integrating with or collaborating with more? And this would be a great opportunity to list some of these, so that as we develop our broadening integration strategy, we can be focusing on the things that are most important to you. I think just to stay on time, we will stop the questions here, but if you have additional questions, we can take them after the next, as we go into the coffee break.